Tonight, as the world remains hooked on the Leongatha mushroom murder trial, the jury heard from the first person to examine supposed leftovers from the lunch that left 3 dead and another fighting for his life. Mushroom expert Dr Thomas May was back on the stand today, cross-examined by the defence. For nearly an hour, he was shown pictures like these and was asked to correctly identify different types of mushrooms. But Dr May admitted,
I can't say with any degree of certainty that they're not death cap mushrooms.
He agreed the general public has a
poor ability to accurately identify mushrooms.
Next in the witness box, Dr Camille Truong, the first expert to examine the supposed leftovers from the fatal lunch. She told the court she'd checked them at home because her office was closed.
I used a small tray and tweezers, which I also sterilised with alcohol wipes. I carefully took out the mushroom pieces onto the tray.
She'd left them in the fridge in her kitchen overnight before taking them into the office for further examination.
Did you find any signs of death cap mushrooms?
No, I didn't.
The prosecution argues these leftovers were different from the poisonous meal served to lunch guests. The jury was then played footage of Erin dumping an item at the local tip 4 days after the deadly lunch. After a police request to search the tip, a worker found the item.
He said it kind of looked like a microwave dehydrator.
Erin Patterson has pleaded not guilty to all charges.
Rachael Brown is from the ABC podcast Mushroom Case Daily. She was in court again today and she joins us now from her podcast studio. Rach, let's go back to this testing the mushroom expert on different mushrooms and his ability to identify them. How did all that play out in court?
Well, you heard there, the jury heard from Dr Thomas May today. Now, he posted on an iNaturalist website back in May 2023 a sighting of death cap mushrooms in Outram. Now, the prosecution alleges that after this posting, the next day, Erin Patterson drove to Outram. So we'll be hearing more about that over the next week and a half, I should say. But interestingly, in a strange connection in this case, Dr Thomas May, he posted under the username on this naturalist website, Funky Tom, so a play on fungi. And it's this very person, Funky Tom, who is now being given evidence to the jury because he's such an expert on how to tell the difference in different mushroom species. And interestingly, he said, like, he's been in the industry for decades, and he said even he struggles, that there are varieties like stubble rosegill and other ones of Latin names that I'm not even going to attempt on live television that can be very confusing, that you've got to look at the stems, the rim, the base. There's all these different things to look at, but they can be quite tricky. And he said even experts can get it wrong. So he was trying to explain to the jury today. And he did say, which I pricked my ears up at, he said that when you dry death caps, they can smell very unpleasant. And it reminded me of something in the prosecution opening that Erin Patterson had allegedly said to the health department when she opened these mushrooms that she purportedly said she bought from a Chinese grocer, that they had a really funny smell. So we might hear about that over the next week as well.
Rachael, we heard as well that Erin dumping the dehydrator at the tip, that's not in dispute. But how is the defence explaining that?
We don't know yet, Sarah, because it's not the defence's turn. So we did see the CCTV vision, as you've just shown. The prosecution case is that she dumped it because it was found to have traces of death cap mushrooms in the dehydrator. But the defence, we heard of an incident that it says happened in the hospital, that Simon, her estranged husband, allegedly said to her, "Is that what you used to poison them?" Now, Simon Patterson denies this, but you might remember back in the opening for the defence put to the jury, you know, in an overwhelming situation like this, that you've cooked a meal and 4 people are in hospital, might you behave in a way that's, you know, less than graceful? Might you lie? Might you do things that look incriminating? So we might hear more about the dehydrator and that potentially how that fits into this panic that the defence mooted quite early in this case.
Rach, it seems like the entire country has an opinion on this trial. Are you finding that as well?
I am. Everyone, Georgie, that I speak to, friends, family, people in the cafe from the courthouse down the road, everyone has an opinion. And I've given this quite a lot of thought in my reporting note on crime and justice over the years. And it strikes me that society loves to grab onto the fantastical, you know, the more extraordinary elements of certain cases like this. It has Chamberlain-esque elements to me, this case, the Lindy Chamberlain trial back in the early 80s. So that's the first thing that I've spent a lot of time thinking about. And the second is that I think people are uncomfortable with the idea that it could have been an accident because it means it could happen to them. You know, the defence argument is that it was a terrible accident, that it was a tragedy. So I think a lot of people think, well, if it was an accident, you know, could that happen to me? Could I cook a meal and leave people seriously injured or dead and be on trial for murder? So it has sparked an awful lot of debate in the community. But as I should say, we haven't heard the defence case yet. We've only really heard largely one side of the story. And then we don't know yet whether the defence will put up some witnesses.
Rach, do you think that's a big part of this, that everyone's trying to solve the mystery themselves, right? That's kind of a natural human thing to do in a way, even if it's not a wise thing to do, but it's what we do. But we don't really understand that cases roll out, one side gets a go, and you see their case roll out in front of you and you get convinced by it, and then the other side hasn't had its go. Like, do you think people just don't quite have their head around the way cases work?
I think so, and I mean, we're starting to learn more about this with courts and these issues more in the media, but I think you're right. And so that's why I've kept trying to say we're still in the prosecution witnesses and, you know, try to, as the jury's been told, wait until they've heard all the evidence. Society, humans, we have a tendency to want to wrap a neat bow around things and try to cling on to things to help explain human behaviour. But sometimes there are no explanations. You know, the prosecution, as I said to you a couple of days ago, is not forwarding a motive. So it will be on the jury to look at all this evidence and try to decide whether there was intent there, whether Erin deliberately poisoned her guests, or whether this was, in fact, as the defence claims it was, a terrible accident and a tragedy.
So much to unfold. Rachael, always good to speak. Thank you very much.
Thank you.